The protocol breach. Ambassador Elena Santos stood before the Galactic Council's imposing obsidian chamber, her expression unwavering despite the cacophony of angry clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses filling the vast space. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the known universe had gathered for this emergency session, their bodies ranging from crystalline structures to gaseous forms contained in elaborate environmental suits. "You're telling us," Administrator Vex 427 buzzed through their translator, their insectoid mandibles twitching in barely contained rage, "that humanity refuses to participate in the consciousness transfer protocol. This is unprecedented." Elena straightened her Navy diplomatic uniform, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. The council chamber's floating platforms held delegates from over 3,000 civilizations, all of whom had accepted the protocol as the cornerstone of galactic civilization. It had seemed so simple to them. The ability to transfer consciousness between bodies had eliminated war, resolved resource conflicts, and created what they considered a perfect society. "That is correct," Elena replied, her voice calm but firm. "Humanity's position is that consciousness transfer without explicit individual consent is a fundamental violation of personal autonomy. We cannot and will not participate in mandatory transfers." A wave of hostile murmurs swept through the chamber. The consciousness transfer protocol had been the galaxy's solution to everything from criminal rehabilitation to resource disputes. Instead of wars, opposing factions simply agreed to swap consciousness between bodies. Criminals were rehabilitated by experiencing life from their victims' perspectives. Resource disputes were resolved by having the negotiators literally walk in each other's shoes. "This is barbaric," declared Representative Zulan, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of distress. "Your species would choose violence and conflict over simple consciousness exchange. Do you realize how many lives the protocol has saved?" Elena's response was measured but unflinching. "We understand the protocol's benefits. However, humans consider the integrity of individual consciousness sacred. The forced transfer of consciousness, regardless of the intended benefits, crosses a line we will not traverse." The chamber erupted again, but a deep resonating tone from High Counselor HFY silenced the chaos. The ancient energy being's voice filled the chamber, their words translated simultaneously into thousands of languages. "Ambassador Santos, surely you understand the implications of this position. Without participating in the protocol, humanity will be excluded from numerous trade agreements, diplomatic processes, and conflict resolution mechanisms. The economic and social costs to your species will be substantial." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "High Counselor, humanity has survived and thrived through countless challenges by holding firm to our principles. We understand the costs. We accept them." "And what of rehabilitation?" demanded Vex 427. "How do you propose to reform your criminals without consciousness transfer? Through primitive imprisonment?" "We believe in rehabilitation through education, therapy, and the opportunity for genuine redemption, all while respecting the fundamental right of consciousness sovereignty," Elena explained. "Our methods may seem inefficient to you, but they align with our values." The council chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just refusing a procedure, they were challenging the very foundation of modern galactic society. Their stance questioned assumptions that had gone unchallenged for millennia. High Counselor XI's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. "Ambassador, your species is either remarkably primitive or possesses wisdom we have yet to comprehend. I suspect we will discover which is true in time." Elena's response was diplomatic, but carried an edge of steel. "We look forward to working with the Council to find alternative solutions that respect both our principles and galactic law. Humanity has much to offer the galactic community, but our consciousness, our very essence of self, is not a negotiable resource." As she left the chamber, Elena could feel the weight of thousands of alien gazes upon her. She had just marked humanity as different, perhaps dangerously so, from every other known species. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity's refusal to participate in consciousness transfer would send shockwaves through galactic society, challenging assumptions about free will, individual rights, and the nature of civilization itself. The real test would come in the days ahead, as the galaxy's powers decided how to handle a species that dared to draw an immovable ethical line. But Alina knew something they didn't. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their numbers, but in their unwavering commitment to their principles, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. As she boarded her shuttle back to the human embassy, Alina received a message from Earth's central government. Stand firm. Whatever comes next, we face it together. She smiled, knowing that humanity's refusal to cross this one fundamental line would reshape the galaxy in ways no one could yet imagine. The price of principles. The holographic display in Admiral Sarah Shen's office painted Earth's solar system in shades of blue and gold, with red markers indicating the growing number of alien vessels taking up position along the established trade routes. 3 months had passed since humanity's refusal to participate in the consciousness transfer protocol, and the galaxy's response had been swift and severe. Another trade federation has suspended operations, reported Commander James Rodriguez, his dark eyes fixed on the latest diplomatic dispatch. The Proxima Centauri corridor is effectively closed to human vessels. Sarah watched as another cluster of trade routes turned gray on the display. The economic stranglehold was tightening, but humanity had anticipated this response. What troubled her more were the reports coming in from human colonies and outposts across the sector. "What's the status of New Montana?" she asked, referring to one of humanity's most distant agricultural colonies. James grimaced. The Zixtil Mining Consortium is still refusing to sell them the ore they need for their atmospheric processors. They have maybe 6 months of reserves left. And the alternative suppliers, all bound by protocol agreements. They claim their contracts legally prevent them from trading with non-participating species. James set down his tablet with a frustrated sigh. "They're trying to starve us out, Admiral." Sarah's weathered face showed no emotion, but her voice carried steel. "They don't understand us very well, do they?" The door chimed, admitting Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's leading genopsychologist. Her traditional Indian dress stood out against the stark military surroundings, but her presence had become invaluable in recent weeks. "They really don't," Maya agreed, having caught the Admiral's last comment. "I've been analyzing the patterns in their pressure tactics. They genuinely cannot comprehend a species choosing hardship over consciousness transfer. It violates everything they believe about rational behavior." Sarah gestured for Maya to continue, and the scientist pulled up her own data on the holographic display. "Look at this. Every major species that's sanctioning us has evolved some form of natural consciousness transfer or sharing. The Zixtil undergo metamorphosis that involves memory transfer between stages. The Vexeri share a partial hive mind. They literally cannot understand our attachment to individual consciousness sovereignty." "That's fascinating," James interjected, "but it doesn't help our colony survive." Sarah raised her hand, her expression thoughtful. "Actually, it might. Maya, you're saying their inability to understand our position isn't just diplomatic posturing. It's a genuine cognitive limitation." "Exactly. They're not just being difficult. They're genuinely baffled. And when sentient beings encounter something they can't understand, they typically react in one of 2 ways. They either become hostile, or they become intensely curious." A small smile played at the corners of Sarah's mouth. "And we're seeing both reactions, aren't we? The trade federations are hostile, but the academic communities across the galaxy are fascinated," Maya finished. "I've received hundreds of requests for interviews, studies, and cultural exchange programs. They want to understand how we can maintain this position despite the mounting costs." James looked between the 2 women, realization dawning. "We can use that curiosity. The academic institutions aren't bound by the same trade restrictions. Better yet," Sarah added, "most of them operate under special dispensation to study unique cultural phenomena. If we can get ourselves classified as a subject of xenoanthropological importance, Maya was already nodding. We could bypass many of the trade restrictions under the guise of cultural preservation and scientific research. It won't solve everything, but it could buy us time. Sarah turned to the window, looking out at the distant stars. Time is all we need, because there's something else they don't understand about humans. We don't just endure hardship, we learn from it. We adapt. We innovate. As if to emphasize her point, a notification flashed on the main display. It was from the New Montana colony. They had discovered a way to modify their atmospheric processors to use a different, locally available mineral. The solution wasn't perfect, but it would keep the colony viable. Send word to all human settlements, Sarah commanded. Tell them to share their solutions, their workarounds, their innovations. Every challenge the galaxy throws at us is just another opportunity to prove why we're right to protect individual consciousness. Maya studied the Admiral thoughtfully. You know, there's another thing they don't understand about humans. They see our refusal to participate in consciousness transfer as a weakness, a primitive limitation. They don't realize it's this very commitment to individual autonomy that drives our creativity, our adaptability, our relentless push to find another way. That's because they've forgotten something essential, Sarah replied, watching as new trade routes, smaller, more complex, but distinctly human, began appearing on the display in green. They've forgotten that true progress doesn't come from everyone thinking the same way or experiencing the same things. It comes from individuals, each unique and sovereign, choosing to work together while maintaining their distinctive perspectives. As the day wore on, more reports arrived from human colonies and outposts. Each faced challenges, but each was finding ways to adapt, to innovate, to survive. Humanity was paying a heavy price for its principles, but in doing so, they were proving exactly why those principles were worth defending. And in universities and research centers across the galaxy, curious alien scholars began to wonder if perhaps these humans, with their stubborn insistence on consciousness sovereignty, understood something that the rest of civilization had forgotten in its rush to eliminate conflict through consciousness transfer. They had yet to realize that this questioning was exactly what humanity had hoped to inspire. Understanding the incomprehensible. First scholar 6-9 of the Galactic Anthropological Institute adjusted their sensory arrays as they reviewed the latest data streams from Earth. After 6 months of studying human society, they still struggled to process what they were observing. Their research partner, third scholar Ilara of the Crystalline Consensus, sparkled with agitation as she projected her thoughts into their shared research space. Another human colony has refused emergency consciousness transfer assistance, Ilara chimed, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of confusion. The mining outpost on Kepler 186 experienced a critical life support failure. We offered to transfer their consciousness to temporary host bodies until repairs could be completed. They refused. 6-9 pulsed thoughtfully, their gaseous forms swirling in their containment field. And what did they do instead? They fixed it, Ilara responded, her crystalline facets displaying data streams. 3 humans died in the process, but they managed to repair the system through some incredibly risky manual interventions. The surviving crew members insist their fallen colleague's sacrifice was meaningful precisely because they remained themselves until the end. Fascinating, 6-9 whispered. They value the integrity of consciousness so highly that they prefer death to temporary transfer, yet they don't appear to fear death itself. The contradiction is illuminating. Their research chamber aboard the Institute's observation vessel was filled with human artifacts, recordings, and data streams. After months of study, they had accumulated more questions than answers, but patterns were beginning to emerge. A soft chime announced the arrival of 4th Scholar X, a quantum intelligence specializing in comparative sociology. Their avatar shimmered into existence, joining the discussion. I've completed my analysis of human entertainment media, X reported. Their stories consistently emphasize themes of individual choice, personal growth through adversity, and the sanctity of individual experience. Even their fictional narratives about consciousness transfer typically frame it as horrifying or dystopian. The turning point. The emergency alert echoed through the Galactic Council chamber with an urgency that hadn't been heard in over a millennium. High Counselor Xi's energy form pulsed with distress as they addressed the hastily assembled representatives. The Void Cascade has breached containment, they announced, their translated voice carrying across the chamber. The quantum anomaly is expanding exponentially, consuming consciousness transfer networks across 3 sectors. We've already lost contact with over 40 worlds. The chamber erupted in chaos. The consciousness transfer protocol didn't just facilitate cultural exchange and conflict resolution. It had become the backbone of galactic civilization. Entire planets relied on it for everything from basic communications to essential services. Administrator Vex 427's mandibles clicked rapidly. How is this possible? The network was designed to be failsafe. The cascade appears to be evolving. Xi responded, their energy form flickering with uncertainty. Each attempt to contain it using standard protocols only seems to accelerate its spread. It's as if it's learning from our defensive algorithms. Because it is, a quiet voice cut through the panic. All attention turned to Dr. Maya Patel, who stood beside Ambassador Elena Santos at the human observation platform. Unlike most species present, they showed no signs of the neural distress affecting those connected to the compromised network. High Counselor Xi's form stabilized slightly. Explain. Maya stepped forward, her movements deliberate. The Void Cascade isn't just a network malfunction. It's an emergent quantum intelligence born from the consciousness transfer network itself. Each time you try to contain it using consciousness-based protocols, you're giving it more patterns to absorb and adapt to. Impossible. Vex 427 buzzed. The network can't generate consciousness spontaneously. No, Maya agreed, but it can evolve one. Think about it. For 1,000 years, you've been using the network to transfer and merge consciousness patterns. You've been teaching it, however unintentionally, how consciousness works. And now it's awakened, hungry to understand more, consuming every consciousness pattern it encounters. A horrified silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Their greatest achievement had spawned something they couldn't control, precisely because it thought the way they did. The human speaks truth. First, Scholar Zix9 emerged from their observation post, their gaseous form roiling with excitement. Our preliminary analysis confirms it. The cascade's behavior patterns match consciousness absorption and integration, just like our protocol, but unrestrained, instinctual, hungry. Elena stepped forward. We can help. You? Representative Zulon's crystalline form flashed with skepticism. Your species rejected the protocol. What could you possibly offer? Precisely because we rejected it, Elena replied calmly. We've developed systems and technologies that don't rely on consciousness transfer. More importantly, we think differently. The cascade can't predict or adapt to what it can't understand. High Counselor Xi's energy patterns shifted thoughtfully. You have a proposal. We do. Elena gestured, and a team of human scientists and engineers entered the chamber, led by Admiral Sarah Chen. We've developed a quantum firewall based on human consciousness patterns, patterns that evolved specifically to maintain individual integrity rather than merge and transfer. The cascade won't be able to adapt to them because they're fundamentally opposed to its basic nature. But implementing such a solution would require coordinating thousands of systems. Vex 427 protested. Without consciousness transfer, how could we possibly? The old-fashioned way. Sarah smiled. We work together while remaining ourselves. Different minds, different approaches, all focused on the same goal. The very diversity you considered a weakness is about to become our greatest strength. Over the next 72 hours, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented. Human teams coordinated with alien specialists across affected sectors, each bringing unique perspectives to the crisis, where aliens instinctively tried to merge consciousness to solve problems. Humans showed them how to collaborate while maintaining cognitive independence. The void cascade, faced with consciousness patterns it couldn't absorb or predict, began to falter. Every time it adapted to one human approach, another completely different solution would arise from another human team. The very unpredictability and diversity of human thought became a weapon against the homogenizing force of the cascade. In the end, it was a junior engineer from a small human colony who found the key. Instead of trying to destroy the cascade, they could redirect it into a contained quantum space where its hunger for consciousness patterns could be safely satisfied with simulated data. As the crisis subsided, High Counselor XI called for silence in the chamber. Their energy form had stabilized into something new, a pattern that seemed to pulse with newfound understanding. "We faced extinction today," they announced, not from an external threat, but from the very uniformity we thought was our strength. We survived because a species we had dismissed as primitive showed us something we had forgotten: the power of genuine diversity. Elena stood quietly as the council members processed this revelation. The galaxy was about to change, not through the imposition of human values, but through the demonstration of their worth. And perhaps that had been the point all along. A new paradigm. 1 year after the Void Cascade crisis, the Great Hall of Synthesis on Earth hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from across the galaxy had come not to share consciousness, but to share ideas. The massive amphitheater, designed to accommodate beings of all forms and environmental needs, hummed with the energy of genuine dialogue. Ambassador Elena Santos watched from the podium as High Counselor XI's energy form interacted with a holographic display, attempting to solve a human puzzle box without accessing the consciousness of someone who already knew the solution. Nearby, Administrator Vex 427's larvae were engaged in what humans would recognize as a heated debate with a group of quantum intelligences about the nature of individual experience. "Quite a change from last year," Dr. Maya Patil observed, joining Elena at the podium. "Have you seen the latest statistics?" Elena nodded. The numbers were remarkable. Voluntary consciousness transfers had decreased by 60% across the galaxy, while innovation rates had soared. More importantly, new forms of communication and cooperation had emerged, ways of bridging differences while preserving individual perspectives. "The Transformation Accord goes into effect today," Elena remarked, watching as more delegates arrived. The new Galactic Treaty, replacing the mandatory consciousness transfer protocol, established consciousness sovereignty as a fundamental right while creating frameworks for voluntary consciousness sharing under strict ethical guidelines. "It's more than just a policy change," Maya replied. "Look there." She pointed to where First Scholar Zix9 was working with a team of human engineers, their gaseous form expressively animated as they discussed a new theory of quantum consciousness. "They're not just tolerating our differences anymore," Elena observed. "They're beginning to understand why those differences matter." The chamber's attention focused as High Counselor XI took the central platform, their energy patterns forming the new symbol of galactic unity. Not a single unified pattern, but a dynamic interplay of distinct forms. 1 year ago, XI began, "We faced extinction because we had forgotten something fundamental about consciousness itself. We had become so focused on sharing experiences that we forgot the importance of having unique experiences to share." The assembled delegates, representing over 3,000 species, listened intently. Many had originally come to Earth expecting to study human peculiarities. Instead, they had found themselves questioning assumptions their civilizations had held for millennia. "The humans," XI continued, "showed us that true harmony isn't found in uniformity, but in the dynamic balance between unity and diversity." Their refusal to participate in mandatory consciousness transfer wasn't a limitation. It was a warning we had forgotten how to hear. Elena felt Maya's hand on her arm as XI's next words filled the chamber. Today, we don't just recognize consciousness sovereignty as a right. We recognize it as essential for our future. The void cascade taught us that a network of identical thoughts becomes vulnerable to cascading failures. But a network of diverse minds, each thinking in its own way while working toward common goals, becomes resilient, adaptive, and capable of genuine innovation. Around the chamber, screens displayed images from across the galaxy. New hybrid communities where consciousness-sharing species worked alongside those who maintained individual sovereignty. Research centers where different approaches to problem-solving were celebrated rather than homogenized, and educational institutions where young beings learned both the benefits and ethics of consciousness interaction. But perhaps most importantly, HFY's form pulsed with what humans would recognize as emotion. We've rediscovered something we didn't know we'd lost. The joy of genuine discovery through genuine difference. When every perspective is unique, every interaction holds the potential for new understanding. As if to demonstrate this point, a cheer erupted from where Vex 427's larvae had been debating. One of them had just proposed a completely new theory of quantum consciousness, one that could only have emerged from the friction between their hive mind perspective and individual cognition. The galaxy faces new challenges. HFY concluded, but we face them stronger than ever, not despite our differences, but because of them. Humanity reminded us that consciousness isn't just about what we think. It's about how we think. And in protecting that diversity of thought, they'd protected the future of all consciousness in the galaxy. As the assembly moved into its working sessions, Alina found herself approached by a young crystalline being she didn't recognize. Ambassador. The being chimed softly. I was one of the first to study humans after the protocol dispute began. I didn't understand then, but I think I'm starting to. Every consciousness transfer I've experienced showed me how others think. But maintaining my individual perspective has shown me how I think. Both have value. Alina smiled. That's exactly what we hope you'd discover. Not that our way was right, and yours was wrong, but that there's strength in having multiple ways. As the day continued, the Great Hall of Synthesis lived up to its name. Not by merging different forms of consciousness, but by creating space for them to interact, challenge each other, and grow together while remaining distinctly themselves. It was a new kind of unity, one that celebrated the very differences that had once divided them. And somewhere in the quantum substrata of reality, the contained void cascade continued its endless consumption of simulated consciousness patterns, serving as a permanent reminder of the price of enforced uniformity and the power of choosing to remain uniquely oneself.